Hello, I'm Ross. I'm a nerd, and I'm excited generally about lots of things, despite my tone of voice and demeanour. But I think this one goes to the right. What I'm here to talk about... Oh, no. Oh, there you go. A big guy on a phone. No, so what I'm here to talk about is devices. So devices, I mean smartphones, tablets, that kind of thing. And like I said, I'm excited about lots of things, and I'm particularly excited about devices because for me, lots of things in technology are happening, and for me they can converge in lots of ways, in lots of kind of consumer type ways in smartphones and tablets. And as someone that reads a lot and talks a lot and thinks a lot, there were kind of certain questions and ideas that I've been kind of coming up against and questions I've been asking myself. And so I wanted to share them here today and hopefully have some fun. So these are kind of just some ideas to give it a bit of context. So devices have never been more popular. In the UK, we are now the kind of highest European country for smartphone penetration. I think we're at 46% at the end of last year, and that's up from 24% the year before. So it's growing massively. You know, more of us have got smartphones than have ever had them before. And smartphones and devices generally kind of are connected to the internet. And that's really cool because when you connect to the internet, you can kind of do anything. And when I talk about devices, I often think of them as a magic wand because for me, you can do anything with them. So chances are some of you today were woken up by your device. It may have told you how to get to Sussex Uni. It may have told you what to eat, what to wear, or even kind of told you who to follow, who to talk to. They're amazing things. And if you will kind of indulge me just for 1 second, in 1977, they released Star Wars, and of course you had C-3PO. That's not me, that's some random American kid. But C-3PO could talk in every language, and you could leave this talk today, you could go to a pub, you could sit down, download a translation app on your smartphone or device, and you too could talk any language. And you know, as a Star Wars fan and as a nerd, that's pretty exciting. And yeah, like I said, I'm indulging myself, so I'll move on. And then kind of before I get onto the kind of the question type stuff, while I was putting together this presentation, Google launched Project Glass. And so for anyone that's not seen this, basically you can be Arnie. You can kind of walk around, you can see what's happening on the internet, and you can kind of meet your friends and talk to them in your eyeball. And you know, I think in my lifetime I'll be able to do that, and that's cool. And again, I'm indulging myself. So on to kind of what I wanted to talk about. I think there are some really big kind of challenges that devices are presenting. And some of you may have seen the videos of the toddlers looking at magazines, grabbing the photos and trying to kind of stretch them like you would do on a device. And I just think, imagine being a child now growing up in a world where that's normal. Imagine being a child growing up where if you get bored of a game, you don't have to put up with it because your birthday's not for another 5 months. You can simply download a new one. What does that do to our kind of sense of patience and our sense of kind of effort? And then imagine kind of what these devices are doing to our kind of interpersonal relationships. There was a book that was released in 2008 called iBrain, and it suggested that people that are digital natives, so i.e. children, are slower to pick up on non-verbal cues than people that aren't. So our devices, these things that we originally created to help us talk to one another, actually doing the opposite. Are they actually making it harder for us to kind of communicate with one another? And again, I don't know the answer, I'm just a wally kind of asking questions. And then imagine being the teacher with a class full of these people. I would be terrified. I'm terrified of children anyway. But you know, you've got a room full of children that are used to kind of downloading new games and stretching photos, and you've got a blackboard and a book. You've got no chance. And it's really trite for me to suggest, but why not, you know, give kids a device and Google, you know, what else is a school doing? What purpose does it serve above and beyond that? And I'm not saying that that's the right answer, but I think the education system needs to kind of ask itself some tough questions. And then, oh yeah, the drunk one of me. So once you kind of leave school, you go and you get drunk. That was me last year. I turned 30 and I don't remember that photo being taken. And I only kind of was aware of it because my device told me that another friend had taken it on a device and uploaded it to a social network. And that's kind of, you know, bad, and the next day I got this disapproving look from my mum and all of the usual stuff. But what's interesting is behind all of that is data. And what these devices are doing is that they're creating ever kind of bigger and ever more complex and personal data trails behind all of us. That's kind of, if anyone's ever kind of poked Facebook and seen what's behind it, it's got the kind of timestamps and locations and the comments of friends of mine that are laughing at me because I'm a bit worse for wear and look like a wally. So kind of what are we doing with these devices? Kind of what data are we giving over and who owns that data? And that's a whole other topic on its own, but again, it's an interesting kind of question to pose. And kind of on a similar vein, a fellow Brightonian, Tom Hume, once asked the question, what happens to conversation when it's all recorded? What happens to a fact when everything is a kind of 5-second voice search away from being checked? Do we live in a society where these devices are holding us to account? And we all know from Gordon Brown, from the fashion designer John Galliano and a depressing number of tube workers, that there's always someone with a mobile phone or a microphone ready to make us look silly and kind of expose the floor. And is that a good thing? I mean, some of us would argue that yes, the bad people are being shown for what they are. But personally, I don't really want to live in a world where I can do no wrong. It will end up on YouTube because some smart ass had a device to capture me on. And as someone that works a lot with big corporates, the idea of what devices are doing to the workplace really, really staggers me. Cisco just launched or just released some research suggesting that in the US in particular, 45% of employees would take a pay cut if it meant that they could have a choice of device. So that if you could bring your BlackBerry or your iPad or whatever it might be to work, you would be paid less, you'd be happy about that. And that's mind-blowing. And so what I started thinking is, what kind of chance do old school employers have? And again, I have no answer, but it's an interesting question. And I guess most alarmingly of all is this guy. A colleague of mine took this photo. It's on the London to Brighton train, and this could be a million different people. It's often me. But he didn't look up from his phone once. He's kind of frantically replying to his BlackBerry. And this, for me, represents an idea of continuous partial attention, kind of a state that we live our lives in. And I guess to kind of bring it to life, I'd ask you to remember any time that you've been speaking to a colleague or a loved one, a parent or a child, and you or them, or maybe both of you have been distracted by a device in your lap or in your hand. You're kind of having a talk about someone's day, but secretly you're looking at Twitter to kind of, see what the football score is. And that's not good. If you think about what that represents, we're never giving anything our full attention, or we're never gaining maximum enjoyment from that, and devices are responsible. And kind of, as I kind of go to my wrap up and my penultimate slide, and you think about devices in this kind of global context, and you think of them as magic wands, what if the world has a wand? Looking at the BRICS nations, so China, Brazil, Russia and India, those guys are starting to get into mobile in a massive way. For example, more Indian people have access to a mobile device than they do a toilet. And in China, 59% of internet use is through a smartphone. These guys are kind of racing ahead, and if you think about new competition in terms of business, potential new audiences if you're a service provider, or just kind of a world where people can travel around and they can be C3POs and everyone can talk to one another. What does that do for business, for the aid efforts, for war, for corruption? It's kind of mind-blowing stuff that I can barely comprehend. So, to kind of wrap up my rambling, kind of Wally speak, like Uncle Ben said to Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, again, not me, with great power comes great responsibility. And I guess with my talk, what I wanted to do was just encourage you all to kind of think about those things that are in your pockets or in your bags, and kind of think about what comes with them. Have fun with them. I think these things are amazing. I'm definitely not suggesting that they're bad. Make friends with them, but just really think about what they represent and your relationship with them. And that's me.